Hey, you two. I wanted to record this video for y'all because today's lesson is one of those where it's just really hard to find something specific the way that I like to teach it. But we've talked about this problem solving investigation before. Ooh, that was a terrible circle. We've talked about how anytime that we problem solve in math, there are these four steps that we do. So the first step is we understand the problem, which might mean, of course, we got to read it, but it may mean that we need to underline and circle to fully understand what we're reading. We may need to grab some scratch paper and write down some of our facts. But we've got to understand what's going on in the problem before we can move to step two, which is a short, sweet plan. So after we read it, then we kind of get like this little plan going, like, I think I need to add, or I think I might need to multiply, or do both. So first we understand, then we move to our plan. After we make our quick plan, we're probably going to spend a good bit of our time right here whenever we solve the problem. And then, of course, after we solve it, we want to do a quick check, even if it's just looking back at it and making sure that our answer makes sense. So we have to understand the problem, we make a quick plan, we solve, and then we do a quick check every time we encounter a math problem. So today we are specifically looking at this strategy, which is logical reasoning. Now, I always tell everyone that logical reasoning is basically just talking about like common sense. It's telling you what's going on in the problem. So you have to take a logical approach to it. You've got to literally take what it's saying and apply it. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be tricky to read through, but you've got to literally take the facts that are in the problem and apply what it's stating. So let's just go ahead and jump right in to this first example. So Marla used flour, sugar, and brown sugar to make a treat. Use the clues below to find the amount of each ingredient she used. Now, I'm not simply putting these fractions in order. I've got to decide which fraction belongs to flour, which fraction belongs to sugar, and which fraction belongs to brown sugar. So I got to match them. All right. So my first clue is the amounts used were 3/4 of a cup, 1/4 of a cup, and 2/3 of a cup. My next clue is she used more flour than sugar. So you got to remember that I have more flour than I do sugar. Then it says she used more sugar than brown sugar. So right away, I should be kind of seeing an order of at least the ingredients. If I have more flour than sugar, but I have more sugar than brown sugar. All right, so let's think about the facts we know. We know that Marla used more flour, and my writing is terrible, but hopefully you can read a little bit of it. Marla used more flour than sugar and more sugar than brown sugar. And I'm just going to abbreviate here because it's a little tough to write. I really need a touch screen for this. All right, and it wants to know what we need to find. You've got to understand what we're looking for. Well, we've got to find the amount of each ingredient. We've got to match the ingredient with the amount that she used. All right. So for this particular problem, my plan is to use logical reasoning. I'm going to use what the clues tell me, and I'm going to make a logical connection between my clues and what I know about greater than, less than, and equal to, because we're talking about more and less. All right, let's look at the next part of it. So I still have my problem up here. So now let's solve. So the easiest thing to do first to me is to let's go ahead and put these ingredients in order of what she used most to what she used the least of. So that's going to be these two clues right here. It says she used more flour than sugar. So what I like to do is I like to just abbreviate and say, okay, right now flour is bigger than sugar. But then it says she uses more sugar than brown sugar. So let's think about this. If I have more flour than sugar, but I have more sugar than brown sugar, that means that flour is bigger than sugar and brown sugar. So the order of the ingredients from greatest to least is flour first. All right. Flour has more than sugar, but sugar has more than brown sugar. So sugar would have to come next. And then the least is going to be that brown sugar. All right. So I've got my ingredients in order from greatest to least. All right. Now we've got to match up our ingredients to the amount. So I have 3/4 of a cup, I have 1/4 of a cup, and I have 2/3 of a cup. Well, I need to see which one of these is the biggest, middle, and least amounts. So in order to do that, I need to go back to what we've learned about equivalent fractions. We're going to put these fractions in order. Since their denominators are not the same, we've got to use equivalent fractions to make a common denominator. So this is when we're going to think of skip counting. Well, right here I have 4 and 4. So basically, I'm just worrying about 4 and 3 since I have 2 4s. That kind of helps. So skip count. Let's start with our 3's, and we're going to stop whenever I get to a multiple that will work with 4 as well. 3 times 1 is 3. Won't work. 3 times 2 is 6. Won't work. 3 times 3 is 9. Won't work. 3 times 4 is 12. Well, yes, that works. 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 4 is 12. So that's my new denominator. Now remember, I want to keep these nice and lined up so that my amounts match with my equivalent amounts up top. Okay, so how did this 4 as a denominator change to 12? Well, I multiplied 4 times 3. So if I follow my golden rule and that denominator changes to a 12, then my numerator has to multiply by 3 as well and change to a 9. All right, how did this 4 in the denominator spot change to a 12? 4 times 3. So if I multiply the denominator by 3, my numerator needs to be multiplied by 3 as well. 1 times 3 is 3. So I'm just making equivalent fractions here by following that golden rule. Now, how did this 3 change to a 12? 3 times 4. So 2 times 4 is 8. Now I have 3 equivalent fractions, and they all have that same denominator, so I can put them in order easily. I am going to do this. I'm going to say that, okay, 9/12, 3/12, 8/12. All right, 9/12, that one is the greatest. So I'm going to kind of abbreviate. 3/12 and 8/12. All right, that one is the least, and then this one's going to come in the middle. So now that I've put my ingredients in order from greatest to least and my fractions in order from greatest to least, I'm just going to use that logical reasoning. If my flour is the greatest amount, my greatest ingredient used, then my flour, and this is how we have to answer these, you have to match them. My flour has to have that greatest amount, 3/4 of a cup. I can't just put this information and this information. I've got to show the connection. You've got to show the connection on your classwork and homework, okay? And then if sugar come in the middle, then sugar is going to match up with my middle amount over here, which was 2/3. Now notice I'm not putting these fractions on the bottom because all this is on the bottom is to help me know which one of these is bigger. All right. And then last was my brown sugar. And that was the least. And so my least over here was 3/12, which matches to that 1/4 of a cup. So all of this is my answer right here because I've got to show which ingredients match to which amount. And we're going to do, after we solve, we're going to do a quick check. Does your answer make sense? Yes. My answer, let me drag this out. Let me make it a little smaller. Makes sense. Well, goodness, it shrunk back up on me. Because the ingredients and amounts match the clues. All right, so basically we're just making sure it makes sense. Yes, I followed my clues. I put my ingredients in order from greatest to least. I put my fractions in order from greatest to least, and then I just matched them. So that is a little glimpse into logical reasoning. So let's take a look at another example. All right. Okay, so on this example, Amir is making salsa using tomatoes, onions, and black beans. All right, so I'm understanding the problem. I'm underlining what they give me. Use the clues below to find the amount of each ingredient he used. So we've got to match the ingredients to the amounts. All right, first it tells me my amounts are 1/2, 3/4, and 1/3. And then it starts telling me a little breakdown about the amount of my ingredients. He is using more tomatoes than black beans and more black beans than onions. All right, so let's come over here to our first step and let's really understand what we know. We know that I have these amounts. And this would be like if you're stuck, you would write your facts out to get that brain pumping and moving and thinking. It also says he is using more tomatoes. Now I'm just going to abbreviate. More tomatoes than black beans. All right. Right? More tomatoes than black beans. Then it says he uses more black beans than onions. All right. So all I did was wrote this sentence in a math way. More tomatoes than black beans, it's greater. Tomatoes are greater. And then more black beans, they're greater than my onions. All right. All right, so now let's look at what we need to find. So we're going to find, the problem has asked me to find, there it is. We have to find the amount of each ingredient Amir uses in salsa. So we've got to match them. Now, my quick plan, and this one's easy because we're using a specific plan, we're going to use logical reasoning. We're going to use that common sense. We're going to use our clues, and my biggest fraction is going to match with my biggest ingredient. So first, let's do that. Let's put my ingredients in order from greatest to least. So here's another way that I'll do it too, greatest to least. So let's go back up here and think about what we know. If tomatoes are larger than black beans, right? So right now, tomatoes the winner. It's the big one. But then it tells me that black beans are greater than onions. Well, it doesn't say anything about tomatoes, but I know that tomatoes have more than black beans. Well, if tomatoes have more than black beans, they have to have more than onions because onions are less than black beans. So my tomatoes are my greatest ingredient. Then let's look for the one that's maybe the smallest or one that comes in the middle. So I know tomatoes is the biggest. Now let's think about black beans and onions. Well, this goes ahead and tells me that I have more black beans than onions. So onions is less. So onions is my smallest ingredient, which means black beans is going to come in the middle. All right. So I've got my ingredients figured out, greatest to least. Now I need to figure out these fractions. So let's go over here. I have 1/2, 3/4, and 1/3. All right, so let's put these in order. So in order to do that, we need to find a common denominator. Now this one's a little tough because I have to think of multiples of 2, 4, and 3. So it has to be even because it's a 2. A while ago, I used 12 with 4 and 3. Well, I can still use 12 now because 2 times 6 is 12. So let's just use 12. And that does happen to be my smallest multiple. Remember to keep them lined up. So this 2, how did this 2 turn into that 12? Well, we said 2 times 6. So 1 times 6 is 6. How did this 4 change into a 12? 4 times 3. Well, 4 times 3 is 12, and 3 times 3 is 9. So I've got my equivalent fractions going. And then finally, how does 3 change into 12? 3 times 4 gave me 12, so 1 times 4 is 4. So now I can put these in order from greatest to least. And honestly, since I already have these lined up over here, I'm just going to go ahead and put my answers out here. Let me make little notes on them though. 6/12, 9/12, and 4/12. Well, 9/12 is my greatest because I need to use this fraction. Then out of 6/12, 4/12 is my least, which is that 1/3, and then this one is my middle. Remember, you don't want to write those fractions down over here because these fractions only help me know which ones of these are bigger and smaller and in that middle amount category. All right, so tomatoes is the largest ingredient used, the greatest amount. So the greatest amount over here is 3/4 of a cup. My greatest amount of black beans is, my greatest amount of black beans. Sorry, it's been a long day. My middle amount for black beans is going to be that 1/2 of a cup. And then my onions is going to be that smallest amount, which is 1/3 of a cup. So there is my answer. And like I said, I couldn't just put the fractions and then put the ingredients. I have to match them up. And then we're going to check. And yes, my answer makes sense because I ordered my ingredients from greatest to least. I ordered my fractions from greatest to least. And then I matched them up. If tomatoes is my largest amount of ingredients, then it's got to match with that largest fraction that I found over here. So that is just how we use logical reasoning to solve some math problems. So for today's classwork, you're going to apply the strategy yourself. You're going to solve each problem by using that logical reasoning. You're going to understand, you're going to plan, you're going to have to solve and then check. Now, you don't have to write out step by step all of these separate things that we've done, but you are going to need scratch paper because you're going to have to put these fractions in order. You're going to have to put these ingredients in order. And then down here, I'm going to make it on the virtual assignment. Now, Valley, you have paper. Landon, you have virtual. So, Landon, what you're going to do is you're going to match. You'll drag the fraction and you'll drag the ingredients side by side so that they match up. But remember, if you use any scratch paper, it needs to stay with this. You need to email it to me, okay? And there's the same thing there. Now, once you get to number 4, then I want you to use the best strategy you can use. It may not be that logical reasoning because we don't have clues here. Just answer the questions or read the questions and then answer them the best that you can. All right. Homework, there is an example on the front, fully worked. And then you're going to do the same thing on the back. Don't forget, you have to match them. You can't just tell me the fractions in order and then the places in order. You have to say the library has such and such, the mall has such and such, the bank has such and such, okay? Same thing on all 3 of these for homework. This lesson is going to make you think. Don't worry, we will go back over this whenever you get back to school. I miss you both. Landon, you have been working super hard. I'm so proud of you. Keep it up, bud. You're almost there where you can come back and you won't have Such just tough time keeping everything together, but you've been doing great. And then Valley, I know we're just starting out, but I know you're awesome. You're going to be awesome at this. So just show out, sister. Show mom and daddy and sister just how awesome you are at math because y'all are both amazing. I love y'all. I miss y'all. And y'all send me an email or post or comment or something if something doesn't work right or you have a question. You don't wait, okay? I may not be able to answer it right away, but I will get to it just as quickly as I can, okay? Sorry, I'm turning off now. Love y'all. Bye.